Hey, everybody! I'd like to welcome you to the Science Channel. Today we will learn interesting and funny facts about technology. So stock up on your favorite foods and drinks. Let's go. So let's start with some funny fact about Apple. The Apple I went on sale in July 1976 at a price of $666 United States dollars and 66 cents. Wozniak later said he had no idea about the relation between the number and the number of the beast, and that he came up with the price because he liked repeating digits and because it was a 1/3 markup on the $500 wholesale price. Jobs had managed to get the inventory into the nation's first 4 storefront microcomputer retailers: Byte Shop, Palo Alto, California; Itty Bitty Machine Company, Evanston, Illinois; Data Domain, Bloomington, Indiana; and Computer Mart, New York City. The Apple I was the first Apple product to be sold. It marked the start of the personal computer industry. It was the first personal computer that came with a warranty. It was guaranteed to work. Cohen says, prior to that, there were other computers. They were kits. They mostly didn't work when you got them. Let's move on to QA, quality assurance, term debugging, actually using not only in QA but also in programming. In computer programming and software development, debugging is the process of finding and resolving bugs, defects or problems that prevent correct operation within computer programs, software, or systems. The term debugging can be traced back to Admiral Grace Hopper, who worked at Harvard University in the 1940s. When one of her colleagues found a moth impeding the operation of one of the university's computers, she told them they were debugging the system. Why is debugging important? Gaps and mistakes happen in computer programming because it is an abstract and conceptual work. Computers process data in the form of electronic signals. Programming language is abstract this information so that people can interact with computers more effectively. Any type of software has multiple layers of abstraction where different components interact to make the application work properly. When errors occur, it can be difficult to find and resolve the problem. Debugging tools and strategies help resolve issues faster and improve developer productivity. The result is an improvement in both software quality and the end-user experience. I'm sure this video is being watched by video game fans as well. Well, then this fact is for you. The first commercially successful arcade video game was Pong, released in 1972 by Atari. Pong was a simple 2-player game that simulated table tennis, and it quickly became a sensation, with lines of people waiting to play the game at arcades across the United States. Pong is a table tennis-themed Twitch arcade sports video game, featuring simple 2-dimensional graphics, manufactured by Atari and originally released on the 29th of November 1972. It was one of the earliest arcade video games. It was created by Alan Alcorn as a training exercise assigned to him by Atari co-founder Nolan Bushnell, but Bushnell and Atari co-founder Ted Dabney were surprised by the quality of Alcorn's work and decided to manufacture the game. Bushnell based the game's concept on an electronic ping-pong game included in the Magnavox Odyssey, the first home video game console. In response, Magnavox later sued Atari for patent infringement. Pong was the first commercially successful video game, and it helped to establish the video game industry along with the Magnavox Odyssey. Soon after its release, several companies began producing games that closely mimicked its gameplay. Eventually, Atari's competitors released new types of video games that deviated from Pong's original format to varying degrees, and this, in turn, led Atari to encourage its staff to move beyond Pong and produce more innovative games themselves. What about gameplay? Pong is a 2-dimensional sports game that simulates table tennis. The player controls an in-game paddle by moving it vertically across the left or right side of the screen. They can compete against another player controlling a second paddle on the opposing side. Players use the paddles to hit a ball back and forth. The goal is for each player to reach 11 points before the opponent. Points are earned when one fails to return the ball to the other. Before we moved on to the next fact, did you remember when was the last time you use optical disc? So, did you know what game console was the first to use optical discs instead of cartridges? The first commercially released video game console to use optical discs instead of cartridges was the NEC PC Engine CD-ROM2, an add-on device for the NEC PC Engine, called TURBOGRAFX-16 outside of Japan. It came out on December 4, 1988 in Japan, before being released in the USA in November 1989 as the TurboGrafx CD. So we have reached the halfway point of the video. Subscribe to the channel and give us a like if you like the long video format. Fun fact: the first computer to defeat a reigning world chess champion was IBM's Deep Blue in 1997. In 1997, IBM's Deep Blue did something that no machine had done before. In May of that year, it became the first computer system to defeat a reigning world chess champion in a match under standard tournament controls. Big Blue's victory in the 6-game marathon against Garry Kasparov marked an inflection point in computing, heralding a future in which supercomputers and artificial intelligence could simulate human thinking. Deep Blue derived its chess prowess through brute force computing power. It used 32 processors to perform a set of coordinated, high-speed computations in parallel. Deep Blue was able to evaluate 200 million chess positions per second, achieving a processing speed of 11.38 billion floating-point operations per second, or flops. By comparison, IBM's first supercomputer, Stretch, introduced in 1961, had a processing speed of less than 500 flops. Deep Blue wasn't just a breakthrough for the world of chess. Its underlying technology advanced the ability of supercomputers to tackle the complex calculations needed to discover new pharmaceuticals, assess financial risk, uncover patterns in massive databases, and explore the inner workings of human genes. Let's continue with telephone era. On April 3, 1973, Martin Cooper made a cell phone call while walking down the sidewalks of New York. These days, that wouldn't be unusual. At the time, it was amazing. It was the first call ever made with a handheld cell phone. You ask, what was the model of the phone? The Motorola Dynatac 8000X was the first handheld cellular phone that allowed people to make longer distance calls than just a landline phone. It did not require any lines or cords to be attached to make a call. Of course, speaking of phones, we can't help but think of the iPhone. Do you know when its first version was released? On January 9, 2007, Apple Inc. CEO Steve Jobs unveils the iPhone, a touchscreen mobile phone with an iPod, camera and web browsing capabilities, among other features, at the Macworld convention in San Francisco. Jobs, dressed in his customary jeans and black mock turtleneck, called the iPhone a revolutionary and magical product that is literally 5 years ahead of any other mobile phone. When it went on sale in the United States 6 months later, on June 29, amidst huge hype, thousands of customers lined up at Apple stores across the country to be among the first to purchase an iPhone. In November 2007, by which point more than 1.4 million iPhones had been sold, Time magazine named the sleek, 4.8-ounce device, originally available in a 4GB, $499 model and an 8GB, $599 model, its invention of the year. The iPhone went on sale in parts of Europe in late 2007, and in parts of Asia in 2008. In July 2008, Apple launched its online App Store, enabling people to download software applications that let them use their iPhones for games, social networking, travel planning, and an ever-growing laundry list of other activities. Apple went on to over 10 updated models of the iPhone. The iPhone helped turn Apple, which Jobs, 1955 to 2011, co-founded with his friend Stephen Wozniak in California in 1976, into one of the planet's most valuable corporations. We won't talk about smartphones without mentioning operating systems. Surprise, surprise, actually no. The most popular smartphone operating systems are Android and iOS. Operating systems are the foundation of every device, and since smartphones are so widely used, the popularity of mobile operating systems has overtaken that of desktop operating systems. In the worldwide marketplace, Google's Android and Apple's iOS are clearly the two main players. For a number of reasons, Android asserts its leadership position in the world. It has Google's support, a more flexible and reasonably priced infrastructure, and a wider selection of devices. These elements play a part in its broad appeal in practically every nation. However, because of its distinct and alluring appeal, iOS commands a large portion of the market, particularly in first-world countries and specialist markets. However, because there are fewer and more expensive options accessible in terms of devices and applications, its accessibility is restricted to a narrower audience. Of course, I didn't forget other operating systems. The Statista resource has a wonderful graph that includes popular operating systems for phones from 2009 to 2023. Well, it's time to consider the facts about the most popular accessory for your smartphones. Of course, we will talk about fitness trackers and smartwatches. Seiko launched the Ruputer, a watch with a very decent claim to being the world's first smartwatch, on this day in 1998. Looking back at the handful of reviews still available online, it's crazy to see how little has changed when it comes to what we want from our wearables. The issues of size, battery life and utility that dogged machines like this 22 years ago are the same ones we're wrestling with today. The Ruputer, later known as the on-hand PC, was the first consumer watch that could run applications and connect to a PC via a docking station. Thanks to an 8-way joystick below the screen, you could write memos, make calendar appointments and update your to-do list. If you were so brave, you could also log your expenses, play games and use a calculator, all from your wrist. Most smartwatches these days have battery lives measured in the hours or days, especially the big flagship wearables. The Ruputer, however, didn't even come with a rechargeable cell, but used a pair of standard CR2025 watch batteries. If you activated the aggressive power management system, you could get 3 months of standby time out of it. But if you did anything beyond checking the time, that figure could fall to as far as just 30 hours before you'd need to swap out the cells. And the last fact, Fitbit, founded in 2007, popularized the use of wearable fitness trackers. Fitbit was founded in 2007, originally as Healthy Metrics Research, Inc., by James Park and Eric Friedman. They had a goal to bring fitness trackers to market. They didn't invent the pedometer and in fact wanted to go far further. That prize goes to Abraham Louis Perlet of Switzerland in 1780 or possibly back to Da Vinci. And there are stories of calculating the distance armies moved using various mechanisms that used automations based on steps or the spinning of wagon wheels. The era of wearables arguably began in 1953 when the transistor radio showed up and Akio Morita and Masaru Ibuka started Sony. People started to get accustomed to carrying around technology. 1961 and Claude Shannon and Edward Thorpe built a small computer to time when balls would land in roulette, which they put in a shoe. Meanwhile, sensors that could detect motion and the other chips to essentially create a small computer in a watch-sized package were coming down in price. That's all for today. Hope you enjoy this video. See you next time.